Singapore, ladies and gentlemen, American Singapore. That's what I've been maintaining for a while now, and I wanted to have a little inside chat with the people that have made this show and all the other shows possible for all these years. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your members only right angle for the week of winning victories and so on and so forth. I would like to talk a little bit about going forward. A lot of things have coalesced kind of at the same time. I continue to work on this millennial project and have gotten about 80% of the way all across the board. But we've had some major problems with the website. We think it was some kind of a cyber attack. We're trying to get those under control. We have a new website that will be coming out within, certainly by next Monday, and if not sooner. And we've been doing Bill Whittle Now with Scott and I for almost 3 weeks now, I guess, and keeping those coming consistently and so on. And the world is changing. And the reason I talk about Singapore is this. In the Second World War, the island fortress of Singapore was the anchor of the Royal Navy, and they knew that the Japanese Navy was getting stronger, and so what they did was they built Singapore stronger and stronger and stronger, added more walls, more casements, bigger guns, until finally Singapore became absolutely impregnable by sea. As a matter of fact, Singapore was so well defended by sea that the Japanese Navy never even attempted to reduce Singapore. What they did was they sent the Japanese army through the jungle. And they said that the jungle was impenetrable to vehicles, and it was. So the Japanese army came down on bicycles. And when they got to Singapore, Singapore fell instantly because the guns were facing the wrong way, and you couldn't turn them around. And this is a model I think is very important. We have all, let me just ask this as a question. Scott, let me start with you. We have always thought that tyranny in America, loss of our freedoms, all of the things that we hold dear, everything that the founders put in place, all of the checks and balances, all of these liberties that are enshrined and sacred to people like us. We've always thought that they were going to be taken away from us by people with guns. And so we have prepared ourselves for an assault by people with guns by having a lot of guns. And this is what I mean by Singapore. The loss of our freedoms and the loss of our ability to speak our mind is not coming from armed people getting out of cars or tanks. We thought that's what it was going to be. That's what it's been historically. But fortunately, we're fighting a nation of cowards, and it's not coming from that area. I'm not asking you to quit your NRA membership, but I am telling you we have defended ourselves so well against the threat of physical violence that physical violence is no longer an option to take away our freedoms. They've got another option, which is the option we saw with Brett Kavanaugh. It doesn't, I guess what I'm asking you, Scott, is this. It doesn't matter what form somebody uses to get you to shut up, speak when you're spoken to, don't have the audacity to disagree with anyone, toe the party line, or else be destroyed. It doesn't really matter where that comes from so long as it's there, and it is there. What do you think about this idea that this whole entire conservative battle line is facing the wrong way, and that the politics of destruction come from telling stories on Twitter and Facebook, that's where the actual battle line is?
There's a saying that the military is always kind of preparing to fight the last war. And I think to a certain extent, the Republican Party is always preparing to fight something that they would do. Like we prepare for battle in the way that we assume that we would conduct battle, but we don't understand our adversary. This is why I've been such a continual and probably annoying advocate of using those devil's advocate questions. I've been doing this for years. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I think you may. But years ago when we were working for the other network, I heard a rumor that they were thinking about either replacing one of us or adding to our show a liberal because they felt like they didn't want to have a show that had just, one point of view, essentially in the view of somebody there. And that was when I really began to actively use the ideas of the left in the course of the show to challenge you guys with them. And of course, you rose to the challenge. And I think we have insulated ourselves, not you and not the three of us, but as a movement, we've insulated ourselves from what the other side really believes, and we are spending much of our time fighting straw men. We are setting them up and batting them over and feeling great about ourselves because we don't really understand how they're coming after us. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton and John Jay had the same problem when they were writing the Federalist Papers, because really the persuasive case they were trying to make in many ways was that, don't worry, this federal government is not going to be so big that it could come and, march on Pennsylvania and take away our rights and our liberties by military force. It's not that kind of central government. And that's how they were trying to calm the nerves of the people who were concerned about standing armies, for example. That's why standing armies is mentioned. That was a big fear for them. But what really happened, and what Madison was wrong about, I think, in many ways, was he didn't realize that we wouldn't lose our rights involuntarily. We lost our rights voluntarily. We turned over power to the federal government. And on a cultural level, we have embraced the left's vision for our country and our values. There was this great scene in a great leftist movie called Broadcast News years ago, and I think I've quoted this before, but Albert Brooks kind of goes off on Holly Hunter at one point and says, you don't understand when, he called William Hurt's character the devil. And he said, and she got upset. She said, this conversation is over. And he said, you don't understand. The devil, when he shows up, is not going to show up with like a red suit and a pointy tail, with a pitchfork in his hand. He's just going to reduce little by little our values until nothing matters anymore. And that is what has happened to us, and that's what we have allowed to happen to us. And it's great to see a moment like the Kavanaugh confirmation when people stand up and say, it matters that a man is innocent until proven guilty. It matters that we don't believe the accuser or the accused, but we believe the evidence. And these kinds of things are what energize people. And I think these are the kinds of messages that we need to get out. And these are we need to be willing to listen to the other side, not so we can agree with them at all times, although if we can, we should. But
absolutely.
But we need to listen to the other side so we can make legitimate arguments.
Right. Steve, again, this is just for members, and I'm very curious to read the feedback on this. Certainly the people that are members here have a better appreciation of culture, politics being downstream of culture and all the rest. But I think the country got a real serious wake-up call with this Kavanaugh confirmation. I don't think many people realized how completely immoral and without any sense of honor these adversaries are. But as I say, what they're trying to do was they were trying to maintain tyrannical control over the Supreme Court, and they did it through storytelling. This is my entire point, right? They didn't try to bump him off. They didn't roll tanks into Washington. They told a story about a man that came that close to maintaining their tyrannical, fear-based rule over other people. They're not coming with guns. They're coming with stories. And that means we have to fight back with stories, and we have to fight back with people who understand how their story is constructed.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, were you still going?
No, I'm all
done. Oh, okay. I started having a thought during your intro, and then I got so wrapped up in what Scott was saying that it still isn't fully formed. It's the kind of thing I would usually fully form over a conversation and a very large brandy, but this is only a very small brandy, so I haven't had my usual impetus to big thoughts, no matter how right or how wrong they might be. But if you kind of let me think this out loud for you. Conservative institutions are not self-sustaining, but they very nearly are so. And that's the nature of conservatism. You have built over time great institutions, and they tend to be fairly easy, in a sense, to maintain. You look at this country, the progressives have been in charge of an increasing number of important institutions for over 100 years now. That is a long, long time. That is a lot of drip, drip, drip on the values that built this country, and yet the essence of America is still there. It's still there. Whether you want to call it the the remnant, which I think is a phrase you were using a few years ago, or a word you were using a few years ago, Bill, whatever you want to call it, the silent majority, that foundation of basically decent, liberty-loving people is still there. It's still there. So how does the left survive? Well, they survive through this long march through the institutions, which officially started, at the Frankfurt School in the 1950s, but really got its start with the first President Roosevelt and his follow-on, especially Woodrow Wilson, who were, the big harbingers of the left and the right of progressivism, which is just a nice word for statism. And this drip, drip, drip has had a big effect. But where does their real power come from, Bill? They've got a series of institutions, entertainment, the news media, and especially higher education, and increasingly elementary school and high school education as well. These institutions all have, you know what they remind me of? If I can take another World War II analogy, Bill, these institutions are their fortresses. They're sort of a Maginot line to defend against a direct frontal assault. We can't just... How do you assault a university? You can't do it. What you do is you go around it. Scott Walker, I think, showed part of the way in Wisconsin by going after their sources of funding, because the left can't survive without public money. It just can't.
The union dues deducted automatically from checks and stuff like that.
Yeah. Exactly. Scott Walker went after them where it hurt the most, and they howled. He may not survive this next election. We'll see. I think the poor people of his state may have a little exhaustion. Not that they disagree with him, but man, it's, there's been an election and a recall and now the re-election. It's just, it's a lot for people to go through. If they're tired of it, well, I don't agree with them, but people are human. So Scott Walker showed one way. Kurt Schlichter is showing another way, which is by being just as mean and nasty as the left is. And the thing is, I know Kurt, and he's just one of the nicest,
real nice guy,
soft-spoken, funny, warm people you'll ever meet. Donald Trump is showing another way, which is you play by their rule book. It's win at all costs. And I don't always agree with his methods, but I love the winning. And who am I to say that his methods are wrong, right? So we are slowly discovering these flanking maneuvers, Bill, and I don't know what they're all going to be. All I know is that it might not be so much of a battle plan that's in motion, but it's a series of flanking maneuvers taken by various people on their own initiative. And I think that in itself is the secret of conservatism and liberty-loving people. We don't need a big, broad movement supported by all these public monies. We love our liberty, we love our country, and we're going to find ways, no matter what they are, to protect them.
Folks, the reason I wanted to have this kind of behind-the-curtains talk with all of you is that it's been an interesting year. I've been basically working 2 jobs in addition to my political work here. I've also been working on this entirely enormous thing which has not been unveiled, and I know that up until recently it looked like I was a little bit AWOL, and maybe I was, and the website's old and creaky and all the rest of it and so on. But I just wanted to say this. It's a strange confluence of events where our website finally became so untenable that we're getting a new one, much cleaner one, much better one, much easier one to use. We expect to have that during the week. It's also a little unusual that the first real Bill Whittle now that we did was one when Scott Ott called me and said there are these new accusations against Kavanaugh. So those are the new shows. And they're the new shows because I've done so many firewalls, I don't really know how to state our position again any more freshly. I think what we need to be doing now is putting counter arguments directly again. We need to be shooting down incoming mortars as they come in. And so all of this necessitates a change from where we were when we started. It's going to be a lot simpler and a lot easier and a lot cleaner and a lot of all of that. But the one thing that I'm hoping has happened, because we're going to do another membership push and we're going to ask you to continue your support despite the fact that we've had all kinds of problems, and to get your friends, is that I think what the Kavanaugh thing showed us was just how powerful the story is, how powerful, how close we came to losing that nomination. And if we'd lost that nomination, what encouragement it would have given these disgusting people to keep doing it and keep upping the stakes. Kavanaugh survived because he told a better story than Dr. Ford did. And during the Bill Whittle Nows, I lamented this. I said, I don't want to live in a country where the person who puts on the most convincing show of tears is the person who's right. I don't want to live in that country, but I do. I do live in that country, and so do you. And so we need people who understand the Japanese army that's coming through from the jungle and not the Japanese Navy that's sitting outside of the range of all our guns and the direction they're pointed. So this little shop of honors here for us is very important for me, for us, and hopefully for you. And we're looking forward to buffing it up because, as we've been talking about this week on Right Angle, this is the first time in my political history where actual offensive action, taking back ground, going beyond the hold 'em or slow 'em down, actually going over to the offensive and starting to win back some territory. This is the first time this has felt really possible, because I think the American people have woken up to the power of story and the damage and that it can cause and the power it has for good too. So we wanted to thank you very much for your continued support. We all genuinely do appreciate it every single day. And you've put up with an awful lot during the years, and you'll probably put up with an awful lot more. But it means a lot to us, and we're going to be doing our best to expand, to get more resources, to get these messages out there as much as we can, and we'd certainly like your help with that as well. That'll do it for our Singapore-based crew. We are we're going to go take a little nap, and then and in about 10 minutes, I'm going to shoot 3 Bill Whittle Nows in addition to the 5 Right Angles that we shot today. It's absolutely fun. We love doing it, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you on behalf of all of us, and we'll see you next week.